There once was a man who turned painting Warhammer from a marathon to a sprint. That man is also known as El Miniaturista. I mean, seriously, have you seen the speed of this guy? He is incredible! But then there was a man who turned it into a contest. Squidmar made a show where 8 incredible painters compete for a cash prize and glory. And in each episode you see them create a small masterpiece in limited time. And the minis are so good that some people thought it's close to impossible. So naturally, I decided to try it myself and stream the whole experience. So there is 8 hours to assemble the model, build the base, and completely paint it, just like in the first episode. However, there is one major difference. In Miniature Masters, participants have chosen their miniature from a roster. But I've done something different. Instead of picking one model from my vast pile of potential, I've picked a pool of 6, and one of them was randomly chosen for me. It was Lord of Hysteria, Centaurian Marshal, and Lord Terminus from Age of Sigmar. To represent 40k, we had new Paintboy Orc, Lycus, and a Plague Marine champion from Warhammer Heroes. The point here is to have a 50% chance on both Age of Sigmar and 40k. 3 of the miniatures are also slightly easier to paint for me, and the rest is slightly more difficult. So I put the miniatures in this randomizer, had a test spin just to make sure it works, and then it was time for the real selection. So here we go! Oh! Okay. Wow, that was close. Yes, we're painting Orc! Which is not ideal, I was like genuinely looking forward to painting something else. But, what can I do? By the way, as I mentioned, I streamed the whole thing, so if you want to make sure that I wasn't cheating or anything, there will be a link in the description with the access to the recording. In the hindsight, I wish the first spin wasn't a test, because I rolled something less desirable later. You see, the problem with this mini is that I don't know what kind of base to give it. It's tempting to give it something simple, but that's not really an option for me. In Miniature Masters, they had a secondary goal to tie their projects to who they are. I don't really want to do that, but I set a goal in my mind to make it special in some way. And the Orc didn't exactly spark much inspiration. So while I didn't get the best option, it could be worse. I could have rolled Lycus. Genuinely don't know what I would do with that. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's start the countdown and let's get assembling. And we are off! Now, as I'm getting all these bits out of the sprue, I should say the conditions are very different from the actual challenge in Miniature Masters. By the way, what a great show, you might wanna check it later. On one hand, I get to do this from the comfort of my own workspace without being interrupted by the judges or the filming staff. On the other hand, I had to record everything myself, making sure the miniature is in frame, and in later stages I had over 150 live viewers, which is a bit stressful. It was probably for the best that I didn't announce it in any of my socials beforehand. So, you know, some aspects are better and some are worse. One of the most useful tools for this kind of challenge is the almighty hairdryer. You see, there are some gaps on this orc which I wanted to fix. Instead of using epoxy putty, I am using acrylic one, which dries pretty fast. And using a hairdryer, it's even faster. One gap that I forgot to fill is this one on his back, which, as you'll see later, bites me in the ass. Now, I could use only the orc himself for this project, but with his little companion, it'll be much more interesting. So he stays in. As we approach the 1 hour mark, we have to pick the base. This is a proper display project, and as such, it requires a plinth. It may sound obvious, but picking the right size is key. Pick a plinth too big, and you'll have to fill all that empty space. Pick a plinth too small, and you can't do anything with it. If you wonder why do I consider a plinth intended for busts, there is one main reason. You see, the problem with round plinths is that you can't exactly fix the best viewing angle.
technically you can do something with the terrain, but the plinth itself doesn't do anything. You can either choose a square plinth to fix the best viewing angle, or pick a slanted plinth like this one. And to me, after testing the composition with white tack, this looks pretty good.
Okay, I am definitely gonna roll with this one.
The thing with these challenges is that you can always find a better solution, but you simply don't have the time. And if it looks good enough, just roll with it. With 1 hour completely gone, I had to decide the environment. And this is the big reason why I was afraid of this miniature. Putting him on a rock in a desert would be boring. An urban base would be better, but too complicated. But as I was going through the various bits, I had an idea to put him into a jungle or a forest.
If we are doing jungle, then we would have to select a different color for the skin. Because green orc and green environment is not exactly interesting, is it?
An idea that would normally be a heresy is now gonna save my ass. I was about to paint an orange orc.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Yes, it goes against Warhammer lore, but for this challenge,
I can do whatever the fuck I want!
the bit selection suddenly became much easier. To anchor the main position, I used a piece of bark and some super glue.
Now here's the party trick they don't show you at school. Accelerator! Smells great!
Instead of using milliput, I went for Tamiya quick setting putty. And I hope it'll harden quick enough so I can paint on top. Also, instead of painting the minis separately, it's just faster to attach them right away.
You know what? This guy is gonna chill in here.
Of course, to make it look like a forest or a jungle, there are gonna be some plants. Using various branches with leaves and just sticking them in there is a good enough solution. To fill in the empty space, I also wanted to include a few mushrooms. It might not be obvious at first, but I gotta admit that these really gave the overall piece much more character. But more on that later. Going into the third hour, I needed to connect all the elements together. And for that, I've used a texture paste.
Actually, the way I use it is put some on my palette and use a brush.
Like that, I can connect all of these things, including the gaps around the mushrooms. So you don't need to do everything with a putty when more elegant solutions exist. And just like before, you can speed up the drying process using a hairdryer. Although maybe that wasn't necessary because...
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna stop the clock now. So 5 hours and 39 minutes left. I'm gonna go on a break.
And before you call me a cheater like someone else did in the chat in a joking manner, this is actually the same thing they did on Miniature Masters. And this is not just me pulling it out of my ass, but Aaron mentioned it in his stream, and even Tran stopped by earlier, and we talked about it. So while I thought I might go for 8 hours straight initially, I took one lunch break in the middle.
Sup, guys?
We are finally ready to start painting. Right? Well, no. I tested the texture paste and it didn't dry properly, only the surface level did, so I had to reapply it again. This eats away like 3 more minutes, but still, nothing is even primed yet. Priming itself took me a bit less than 10 minutes, but I didn't record it for obvious reasons, but I found another problem. Remember that ugly gap on his back? You could even see it as I was filling the gaps before. Obviously, I only find it after priming. So the only logical solution was to use paint for gap filling. If it sounds ridiculous, it really isn't. Even the putty that we've used before is essentially just thicker acrylic. So if you use acrylic paint in a very thick consistency, you can sand it down as well.
Okay, this probably has to be enough. Okay, I can't be losing any more time on this.
With a bit more than 5 hours left, I had to move my ass to get it finished. One thing that'll save me is a bit of airbrushing, but not before setting up my palette. I put down the most important colors that I might use. If I have to add more colors later, that's just wasting time, isn't it? Another thing that helps is using proper amount of paint. Like this, it won't dry out so easily, despite going through heat wave at the moment. And with that out of the way, time for airbrush. In total, it took me around 25 minutes to get to this point. One of the reasons why it took me so long is because I had to switch airbrushes halfway through, because of clogging. Well, no matter, we have to press on. Now, with less than 5 hours left, I really have to think about what matters the most. As you would guess, it's not the tiny rocks or the small accessories, it's the skin. It's really interesting how on a time constraint you gotta consider which brushstrokes matter and which really don't. Obviously everything has to be painted, but not necessarily to the same standard. After around 20 more minutes, I started other parts. Another cool trick is to skip base coating entirely. You see, most of the features are dark enough after airbrushing them, so I can paint on top easily. Normally, if I was painting some steel on other models, I would pick a cold base coat. But I ain't got time for that shit! Just using some brighter colors on top will have to be enough. This kind of sketchy painting approach is fully appropriate for this challenge. What matters is impact, not how refined it is. This kind of painting to me would be almost like speed painting. Of course, this is display painting, but you know what I mean. In my case, it's very frequent that I spend tens or even hundreds of hours on a single project. So doing this challenge, I wanna see if I can manage to be more efficient. And so far, it's not looking bad. One thing that is pretty difficult to balance is how much time you spend on details. This mushroom, for example, looks pretty insignificant at first, but I truly think it elevates the whole piece. Without it, the middle of the base is basically empty. And while I think this goofy little guy deserves some attention, the time is running out and I gotta be deliberate. I already mentioned that sketching is super useful here. But what does it mean, really? Here, as I'm painting the metallics, I can use like 2 or 3 layers to render everything. Even other features can be rendered with 2 layers without any base coat. But of course, knowing which parts gotta be brighter and which ones can be left darker is key. But the point is that you don't have to refine them too much or even blend it. As I'm getting closer to having just 3 hours left, I kinda realized that the back is barely painted. In fact, many details were barely touched at all. What is particularly concerning is that the syringe gun is not finished, although it's pretty important. By the way, syringe gun? Really? So we just straight up stealing from Team Fortress 2, aren't we? Anyway, with less than 3 hours left, it was time to lock the fuck in.
Oh, what the fuck? The arc is almost finished. I didn't even realize.
And while that is true, I mostly got the boring stuff out of the way. But there are a few big problems that gotta be addressed. It comes down to 3 things. First of all, the base is a bit too flat. I gotta restore it somehow and still add more moss or grass. Second, the goblin is basically unpainted. And third, I should probably make the cloth parts interesting somehow. So the idea here is to make them slightly purple to complete the secondary color triad. If you don't know what that is, just Google it. But basically, it means that you are using green, orange, and purple as the main colors for your color scheme. And this purple is way more muted, so it doesn't stand out too much. Because if it was too saturated, it would clash with the rest. As you'll see later, I still find a way to make it even more interesting, but for now, let's tackle the bigger roadblock, which is the goblin. Whenever I paint miniatures, there are a few bits that I can't get over until they are painted just right. In this instance, it were the lenses. They were simply too small and I painted the reflections the wrong way at first. The result? Around 6-minute loss of my precious time.
Okay, this bullshit took me 6 minutes. Holy smokes.
And with just 1 hour left, there was no time to spare. I had to finish the goblin, touch up the orc, and still work on the base. Here I had around 45 minutes left. I still wanted to do so much, but there was just no way to ignore the base anymore. Using these kind of random brushstrokes to simulate the undergrowth is a neat little trick. The terrain also doesn't need that much precision. Now, earlier in the stream, I was toying around with an idea to add some freehand to the cloth. And at this point, I really have to consider whether it's worth to pimp him out or just play it safe.
I'm still considering the freehand, I just don't know.
But with the time running out and no other options in my mind, I decided to bite the bullet. Earlier, I mentioned that this mushroom is elevating the whole piece. And now, it's gonna serve as an inspiration for the freehand. With this little touch-up, I can turn a seemingly regular orange orc into a mushroom-picking one. Yay! Cannibalism! But only if I can manage to do it in time. No time to waste. With only 25 minutes left, I have to speedrun the base.
In ideal world, you wanna use PVA for this, but we don't live in ideal world.
And at this point still, I needed more colors on the base. The solution? Airbrush.
This might legit fuck me over. Oh, we're done.
At first, I legit thought it's gonna be a struggle. And yeah, at times I wasn't sure it would work out. But ultimately, it was so much fun. Even the miniature itself came out great, especially when you consider it took only 8 hours for all of this. Also, I thought maybe I can add some touch-ups later, because there are some mistakes, but you know what, I wanna conserve it as it is. If you wanna try this challenge for yourself, I say just go for it, it's super fun and it'll push you out of your comfort zone. Anyway, if you wanna do it, you'll probably have to sketch a lot, because it's fast without sacrificing much quality. You've even seen a lot of sketching on this orc. So if you wanna learn how to sketch, check out this video next. And see you there!